is probably the party that's using words a lot if it's got to proceedings like reasonable and amicable. I have tried to be reasonable. I have tried to be amicable. The persuader will refer to past conflict and they will refer to the mutual high conflict, when in actual fact they know perfectly well it was one-sided. Welcome to this episode for the Survivor Diaries. This episode is called Understanding Domestic Abuse in the Co-Parenting Relationship and in Child Arrangements. And you can see that's quite wordy, so I've shortened that down to domestic abuse in the child arrangements. It's understanding as well how that continues as a form of post-separation control. So in this episode, we're going really back to the basics here. And the true teacher in me is now going to produce, hopefully, I say the true teacher in me, Paul is actually going to produce on the screen, hopefully next to me, the objectives of this particular video. So this is that from watching this very short video, which is going to be 10 minutes, 15 minutes maximum, that you know how to identify domestic abuse continuing through the child arrangements, that you understand how domestic abuse can continue through the child arrangements as a form of post-separation control with devastating effects on the non-abusive parent and any children. And I want as well from this video for you to be able to see how to explain that to the courts, to court professionals, about how the domestic abuse is continuing. To do this, we're going to rely upon a model that I've been referring to throughout the Survivor Diaries videos, which is Pat Craven's model of the Dominator. Now, the Dominator is her model of the abusive personality, and it has 8 aspects to it, which I will cover in this episode. What I've realised, and I'm now doing with the full support of Pat Craven, is showing how this aspect manifests in legal proceedings, in child arrangements proceedings, in the co-parenting arrangement and in the actual proceedings themselves. To do this, so this video as just an introduction, very brief introduction to the different aspects of the personality of the Dominator. To start this, we're going to do this in a slightly backwards way. So I'm going to start by talking about what the courts expect from two parents when they go to court in dispute about the child arrangements or a specific issue to do with the children. Now, this is going to, when I talk to people, survivors of domestic abuse, and I know the survivors, about if I could wave a magic wand and create the co-parents that you're working with to actually become these people, how would it be? And quite often they'd just laugh out loud. So if you are in an abusive situation, I hope that this will reassure you that this is the normal, non-abusive thing that the court expect. This will be straightforward. If you are a court professional, if you work in law, then you will hear the courts say this all of the time. If you're judiciary, CAFCAS, this will be your ethos. If you are supporting a person who is co-parenting, either with an abuser or is trying to recognise they're on the recipient of allegations, they are the recipient of allegations, and they're trying to understand if what they're doing is abusive in that sense. So this is how you can support a person. So we're looking first of all for what the court expects, and then I'm going to show you how that doesn't apply in a domestic abuse situation. So right from separation, right at the start, the court expect the communication between the two of you to be warm, friendly, civil, polite, cheerful, pleasant, relaxed, open, calm. In front of the children, especially so. This is Pat Craven's The Friend. Okay, and this is a lovely person to be around. Why would I not want to be around somebody that was like that? Just applying this to my own case as a survivor. It makes sense. Then they want both parents, they expect both parents know the children that they're talking about. They know their names, their interests, their likes, their dislikes. And when they have the children in their care, they take proper care of them. Okay, normal. Nobody's batting an eyelid yet, are they? This is exactly what we expect. But those people who are in an abusive co-parenting relationship will be going, All right, okay, so I was right. So that's all right then. So what else did the court expect? Well, the court expect a mutual support, a mutual building each other up, because a mutual recognition needs to happen that if the other parent's happy, then the children are happy. And what else is there after the separation, after a breakup, apart from the children? In a co-parenting relationship, there's nothing else. So why not make it a civil relationship like that? And within that, it's about boosting the other co-parent, saying that they're doing a great job with the children, instead of saying you're doing a really bad job with the children. It's just, just that kind of, is that person trying to work with the other co-parent and boost them up and like support them, or are they trying to drag them down and say that they're doing it wrong or getting them wrong? You'll see that with this video, what I'm going to do, I'm going through each one and just giving you a brief example, some brief examples of what the court expect. Also, the court expect that both parents will be completely reliable about childcare arrangements. If they say that they're going to be there at 6 p.m, they'll be there at 6 p.m. If they're dropping off the children at 10 a.m. in the morning, that's what time they'll be there. This kind of ability to be, well, it's just reliability really, for the non-abusive parent, both parents, to be able to get on with their lives without having to, and knowing that when the other parent's supposed to have the children, they're going to have them, so they can plan work, they can plan, they've got to work abroad or things like this, and they can plan all of it around that with the non-abusive parent. This is what the court expect. The court also expects both parents to be discreet and respectful of the intimacy as former partners, as former intimate partners. They expect, that shouldn't be spilling over into matters about the children. The children should have no knowledge about why the parents split up, and it should all be terribly amicable, and we should be getting on with it straight off. They don't expect the children to be involved in how the parents came to separate, who the parents may have been seeing, what behaviour. The courts are not interested in this, and they would get very, very upset if they saw one parent referring to this, especially in front of the children, because parents don't need that. They don't need that stuff. The other thing that the court expects are that both parents are actually engaged in the proper work of parenting, the washing of uniforms, the packing of lunchboxes, the doing of homework, the doing of reading, all of the things that need to be done on a day-to-day running of the children business. This is not just going to nice places at the weekend and spending lots of money. This is not that. This is the day-to-day care of the children. So sharing the work of parenting rather than arbitrary concept of time. So parents, this is a big red flag to me. If people are asking for exact 50-50 sharing of time, to young children that means nothing. This is something that I'm hoping from these videos you'll be able to see. This series of videos that we're doing is something that I'm hoping to show you the characters or common patterns that the dominator will do and the non-abusive counterpart would do. And the non-abusive counterpart is of course what I'm talking about now, which is what the court are expecting. So this part is kind of like a partnership. The partner is doing a share of the work. Both parents have got work commitments, they're both at work. The child's ill when they're at school. Whose problem is it? Well, it's both parents' problem, isn't it? Okay, can they work together? Can they not work together? Well, that's a key issue. Finally, if there was something that had to be changed about the arrangements, the court would expect both parents to negotiate this, to talk reasonably about it. If you're missing time here, and if me taking the children away then means that you miss that weekend, and obviously we have to make that up there, and then you wanted that week away there, well, you have that, and that'll cover my... And this is negotiation. This is a negotiator. They expect both parents to... It's quite clinical. They expect them to be suddenly able to be so civil with each other and polite, and even if it's a bit frosty, a bit through gritted teeth, they expect things to be nice for the children, because the court's focus here is the children. That's all they care about. Now that's what the court expects. This is the problem, and this is what frustrates me when I see clients when I hear of people that I'm supporting on a pro bono basis and they've been in court and they get absolutely roasted by the magistrates, by the legal advisor, by the district judge, because they're not doing these things. Now think for a minute. If the parents were doing all of these things, warm, friendly, civil, polite, cheerful, knowing the children are safe with them, they support the other parent, they help each other, they cooperate, they're totally respectful about the adult issues, they don't bring these up, they're reliable, they share the work, child needs picking up from school, who's going to do it? Well, one of us, etc. The truth teller, they're accountable. All of these things, they negotiate. These parents never get to court. That really frustrates me when I hear both parents being roasted for not behaving to this ideal, because in a high percentage, more than 50% of the time, there is a domestic abuse situation. And it really upsets me when I hear both parents being criticised for not behaving in this way, because the non-abusive parent, I promise you, the non-abusive parent is doing everything they can to be that way. The court wants. And they are just working with somebody who is constantly opposing, constantly antagonistic to that. It's a very, very one-sided thing. It's domestic abuse. It is not high conflict parenting where one parent and the other parent, they're both doing the same. It's not that at all. And it's very unfair to label a situation as high conflict when it's domestic abuse. Okay, so I've run through all of these things that the court expects. What Pat Craven does, and what I have done just then, is I have run through all of the non-abusive counterparts of Pat Craven's Dominator. And what these videos are going to show you in a step-by-step video sequence. So starting off with the bully, I'm going to show you the counterparts of that warm, friendly, civil, polite, cheerful, pleasant, relaxed, open and calm person that we expect the co-parents to be, which is the bully. And I'll give you one quick example. So the bully, to throw a few in off the top of my head, the bully will demand arrangements in a certain way. The bully will refer to court proceedings, and we're going to have to see what the court says about that. There's an unfriendliness in the correspondence, these text messages that you can see, and that's what I want to show in those videos. Similarly, where the court expects both parents to know the children, to know their names, their likes and their dislikes, you'll find that the bad parents, the bad father, as called in Pat Craven's Dominator, or the bad parent, they are manipulating the children. They are using the children to obtain information about the other parent, and they're using the children to pass on information about the other parent. That's something we'll go into in that episode. Similarly, you've got that parent that's kind of supporting the other parent. They've got their back. They know that they need to do that course, so they're going to pick the children up on that day, for example, because they know that if the other parent's happy, then the children are going to be happy, and then they can get on with their life and I can get on with my life, win-win. So they have that kind of they're boosting up the other parent. They've got their back with their kids. If the kids are kicking off, both parents are singing from the same hymn sheet. That is the boost, the support that you've got. On the converse, you've got the head worker. The head worker is doing everything they can to undermine the other parent, which is what we'll show in that episode. I've referred to the expectation that the courts have that both parents will stick to the arrangements, the agreed times, the agreed dates. They won't cancel at the last minute. What you find in the alternative is that the jailer, this aspect of the Dominator in court proceedings, to give one example again, will not stick to those arrangements, especially around birthdays, special occasions, because they want to cause disruption to the other party. Again, reiterating this point, this is what I want legal professionals to be able to see, are the kind of things that you can identify and say, whoa, that's domestic abuse. I can see that is domestic abuse. Refer back to Pat Craven's book, Living with the Dominator, and you can see how that behaviour is appearing in the conversations with CAFCAS, the conversations with the social worker, the evidence that people are giving in chief. That's in the court hearings as their own evidence. So you've got the court's expectation that adult issues are not going to be discussed with the children. the reasons for the parties' separation, that's not something that should be concerning the children. The sexual controller, on the other hand, uses information to demean or to try to degrade the other co-parents, and they will do this in front of the children as well, setting out to deliberately harm the non-abusive parents' relationship with the children. And I know that that's difficult to get your head around properly. I do know this. I didn't understand what domestic abuse until I experienced it properly. And you might find this hard to believe. I accept that. You might be thinking, well, come on, whatever abuse has gone on, they still love their kiddies. You know that's true. And it'd be lovely if it was. I'm very sceptical about that. So the sexual controller will try to get information about who the other parent is seeing. They will say bad things about the other parent or things that are inappropriate to the children and to other people. And you can see this. This is quite a common tactic, especially when there's court proceedings, to try and shame the other parent. I'll talk about that at length when I'm talking about the sexual controller, as some of you may be able to imagine. The opposite to the truth teller is, of course, the liar in court proceedings. We already do have an episode about the liar in court proceedings, but that was in the context of what to do about it. This episode is going to be more, when we do this one about the liar, it's going to be more about the lack of accountability and how that creates a certain risk in the child arrangements. So the liar, and again, to pick an example of how this person behaves, the liar, a bit like the head worker, tells you that arrangements were a certain way and you've got to comply with this now when you know that they weren't. And they're lying, they blatantly lie about things that have been said or things that have happened. Finally, if you remember, on what the court expects, we've got this negotiator. So if things come up in the happens approach to life, things come up, and what the court expects, what the non-abusive expectation is that the parents will negotiate that they will discuss how they can resolve this situation so that, it's the least inconvenience to all parties and the children, etc. The alternative to the negotiator is very much the persuader. The persuader doesn't take responsibility for things. The persuader is probably the party that's using words a lot if it's got to proceedings like reasonable and amicable. I have tried to be reasonable. I have tried to be amicable. The persuader will refer to past conflict and they will refer to the mutual high conflict, when in actual fact they know perfectly well it was one-sided. The persuader will refer to this high conflicts and about how they've had this realization that it's just not good for the children and how, they just want to move on. And if only the other parent could move on as well. They don't mean any of it. And what they're actually trying to do is just to curry favour with whichever professional they're talking to at the time. So this is, as I keep saying, this is a very, very brief overview of the different aspects of the Dominator character. This is made with the full approval, as I do keep saying, of Pat Craven. It's very aware that we're going to do this series of episodes dealing with each of the aspects in turn. And what I want to show there is how to recognise it, the problems that it can cause, and how to evidence it in the proceedings. Alongside these episodes, we are going to be running webinars. Please watch out on social media for those. In those webinars, we are going to be developing on the ideas of the different kinds of evidence that you can get, any questions that people have from each of the episodes as they go forward. Okay, I hope that's been helpful from whatever perspective you're looking at this from, whether you are experiencing domestic abuse in the co-parenting relationship, just thinking, what is going on, what? Or whether you are wondering if you're receiving allegations that you are perpetrating domestic abuse, and if you're actually looking at that. As I said, I don't know if I said it in this episode or the previous one, I have absolute respect for anybody who can look at their own behaviour, however ugly, and tell the truth about it. Or if you're just a professional or somebody who's supporting somebody who's going through the above, then I hope that that's been helpful for you. Okay, so I'm very excited about the upcoming episodes and the webinars that will be going with them. And so I look forward to seeing you in those. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.